everybody, and welcome to Perspective. This is, of course, the home edition. And first up in this program, we have our General Manager, Royal Aills. His guest today is the Oklahoma Speaker of the House, Charles McCall.
Thanks, Sam. I'm now joined by the Speaker of the Oklahoma Legislature, the House Speaker, Mr. Charles McCall. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you coming to the campus all the way over here.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to be with you again.
Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next week.
Sure.
You have the special session, and you guys are going to be looking at redistricting for the congressional seats as well as the state, right?
That's correct.
So let's talk a little bit about what all is in the details of that.
Well, sure. The process started over a year ago for redistricting. Our Constitution requires us every 10 years to redistrict the seats at the state level based upon the census data that takes place. The census effort every 10 years. So this year, in fact, we took up, the federal government is late in delivering the census data this year. We didn't receive it until August 26th. It's the first time in country's history that it's not been delivered in time. We actually ratified some maps while we were in session earlier this year based upon the most current information that we had, which was the 2019 estimates. However, when the final data arrived, it was quite a bit off of the estimates.
More or less?
So of the 101 seats in the House, we had probably about 25 seats that were within the margin of error allowed.
Wow.
And the others either had too many citizens in them or too few. So basically we had to continue on with that process, but which was not that difficult because we had done so many public town halls throughout the year and taken that public input. So once we had the actual numbers, we were able to put those together.
Let's talk about the congressional seats.
Sure.
That's changed a little bit. 3 of our congressmen have moved a little bit. I mean, we got a map that shows what it looked like in 2011 and what is proposed that you guys will be voting on. And Mark Wayne Mullen, he's pretty much taken 1/3 of the state. He's moved over to Washington County, which is Bartlesville, which Kevin Hearn had that in Tulsa. And then Congressman Bice, she's grown about 200,000 more people in her district. So the parts always seem to move every 10 years a little bit.
Sure, the population for the state of Oklahoma has actually increased over the last 10 years. So what is the challenge with the congressional map is there can be no margin of error. It has to be right on the money. Every district has to have the same amount of people in it, and we just have 5 congressional seats for all the population in the state of Oklahoma. So you do see the map is going to change some based upon those population shifts that have taken place over the last 10 years. But the good news is the population of the state's increasing, and that's a good problem to have. But when you just have five congressional seats that you have to spread over the entire state, these lines, they all converge together at some place.
So when you go down deeper to your district, everybody's local, politics is local.
Right.
The Democrats aren't going to like the way the map is moved around a little bit. So do you work together on that, or is it just pretty much we're in power, we'll do it the way we want to do it, and we move on?
Yeah, and that's a great question because that's exactly how it doesn't work.
Okay.
There can be no political data in this process. The process is apolitical. It's driven by the public input, and we've been all across the state over the course of a year to listen to people on what they think makes sense, for a district to look like, what they think works together, what doesn't work together. That's pretty easy it's a much easier process for a state level House district map where you're talking about 39,000 people per district. But when you have to take nearly just under 4 million people and put those into 5 different districts, that have no margin of error, that have to have the same amount of representation each, it becomes some of these boundaries on neighborhoods or whatnot that somebody may say, well, why here or why there?
You're just trying to get to a number.
It's 3.9 million people that we have to hit to a certain number. Yeah.
But then it becomes a political hot potato.
Sure, but
Always does.
But the politics are exactly what can't be part of the process.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And on that process, Royal, I'll tell you, I'm the first speaker that has ever appointed every House member to this process. In the past, it was a small group that worked on it. So every member of the legislature has had input on these maps, and they're hearing from their constituencies also. But at the end of the day, what drives these maps are what the public input has been and what the census data tells us.
So do you expect any pushback, or is that just something that comes with the territory?
It always comes with the territory, but once again, some of the rhetoric that I hear about the boundaries seem to be political gerrymandering, and is what the whole process is set up to avoid.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the big session, January, February, March, April, and May. What do you expect out of that? What's coming up? We know there's going to be a lot of money flowing in, and everybody's going to want a piece of the pie. So what do you expect out of this session?
Well, the ARPA monies, much like the CARES Act monies, they really flow through the executive branch of government, really outside the legislature. Now, with the ARPA monies, the governor's asked the legislature to assist in trying to prioritize the utilization of those monies. We've been working, the members have never been more busy in an interim year than this summer. We have about 5 years to fully dispose of those ARPA funds. But it'll take a couple of years to get through all the projects. There's $1.8 billion just in the ARPA funds coming to the state. There's some additional monies that are already going to the counties and to the municipalities. But in terms of the states, what it has to allocate for priorities is $1.8 billion. There's over $3 billion in requests so far. So there's going to be a process of, and there is a standing ARPA committee, 12 members of the House, 12 members of the Senate, and they're working through those proposals and those submissions and to prioritize those and ultimately send them to the governor for the decision.
So there's still going to be extra money coming in, tax receipts. You're receiving a bunch more money outside the ARPA fund. So how do you see the budget settling this year?
So I think it's important to note, ARPA has nothing to do with the state's budget.
That's a separate entity.
It's federal money. It'll have no place in our state's annual budget. We're not utilizing it, a penny of it for our state budget. For our state revenues, they're currently up 16% over estimates, which is very strong, which leads me to believe at this time that we're going to have a very robust budget situation again, which there will be opportunities to increase the state's reserves if we want to, make some priority investments for the state as well. So it should be a positive. This session, from a budgeting standpoint, should be very positive.
So you think you'll increase the state net of money as opposed to fund more, give everybody a bump in their bucket?
Well,
across the board.
So we have two savings mechanisms in the state of Oklahoma. The rainy day fund, it receives money automatically. The state.
So you don't have to direct money to that.
That's correct. That's correct. Once we reach everything over 105% of our estimate, will go in there until it reaches a certain cap.
Right.
We also have the stabilization fund, which the legislature can direct those funds, directly into it to bolster that reserve mechanism. We'll just wait and see what the priorities are. With all of the federal money that's flowing into the state, there'll be a real opportunity. It'll take a lot of pressure off some of the other areas for probably direct requests, and I think you may see some money set aside to bolster our reserves a little bit.
This is really a different direction from when you came into the House, when you were cutting everything because there wasn't any money.
Correct.
Now you have more than you need, or more than you thought you would need coming in, because the state is prospering very, very well, low unemployment. We're doing really, really well. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. I think our state is in a very, very good position, especially in comparison to other states, but even by our own measures and performance, it's very strong. But it's important to recognize that when things are good, you need to make sure that you put a little bit to side, because it was less than a year ago when COVID set in, and we thought we could have a $1.3 billion contraction. Well, that would have exhausted all of our state's reserves in just one single event. So I think it's prudent for us to always maintain, a reserve that we can weather a significant event that may be unforeseen.
We only have a couple of minutes left, but healthcare is a big issue. So
Always.
you have to tackle that. I'm not sure how you're going to tackle that yet, right?
Well, we have it is basically what continues to be discussed in the legislature is the administration, how we're going to administer the state Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion that the people voted for, and so whether that's going to be administered by a third party administrator or it's going to be administered by the state. There's still, we're still trying to reconcile that method, but the expansion will move forward because the people of the state said they directed us to do so, and we'll have right now the federal government's going to pick up about 95% of that expansion cost. Long term, we'll have to plan for how to pay for that as those subsidies are curtailed by the federal government.
Well, 30 seconds left. What's it like being the Speaker of the House? Have you enjoyed it?
This year I have. Well, there's always something unforeseen. This year it was the week-long weather event that impacted everybody in Oklahoma. Right. The year before it was COVID. We've seen fiscal cliffs, but we're much more stable. We're prepared, and who knows what next year holds for us, but we'll be ready.
Well, thanks for coming by. I appreciate it very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Sam, back to you.
We'll take a short break. We'll be back with more right after this.